Change is highly emotional for people. And so it's really normal for people to resist at first, and then they get into an area of experimenting with what this new state of being or existing or what have you will be. And the more we can help people through that like lower phase where they start to experiment, the faster they're going to get to the end phase, which is integration.
Spotlight, your new customer success soundtrack from the heart of Canada, brought to you by CS in Focus.
Hi there, I'm Marta Montero. I head up customer success for North America and APAC at Gatekeeper. We are a vendor and contract lifecycle management organization. I first got into customer success 10 years ago. It was a complete accident. I actually started off as an archaeologist, and I realized that archaeology wasn't really my passion, even though it was something I studied. And I knew I really wanted to get into tech, and I thought PR was the way to get into tech. So I did a PR program, and part of that internship, I started at a marketing analytics company, and I actually started in the customer success department. And I had no idea what customer success was. This was 10 years ago, so the industry didn't know what customer success was either. But I really grew to love it. And I stayed there for 3 years and moved on to different places and picked up a lot of different skill sets. And I now lead customer success teams. What I've learned in that time is just how different customer success is today to when we started 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it was really focused on training and product, and let me just answer your questions about the product. Whereas now it's really focused on business outcomes and driving change and understanding the people element, which was something that was missing 10 years ago.
What do you think of putting customer success under product?
I don't love it. As I've mentioned, I think that the most important aspect of customer success is the people element. I think you can have the most perfect configuration and the most technically complex implementation of something, but it's not going to be successful if you aren't helping the people element. You're not helping people through the change that they're going to go through when a software rollout happens. And I think that's the power, that's really the niche that customer success managers need to live in. And that's a people aspect, that's not a product aspect. So I do strongly believe that customer success should be its own department, and I think that it should be really, really focused on change management and helping our customers, enabling our customers on how they can drive change to their end users so that that perfect technical implementation that they've done is successful.
A question about implementation in CS. Do you think implementation should be a service? Like, what is the ideal customer journey for you?
That's a really interesting question. And I think my answer to that changes depending on what the product is. I do think in some instances implementation should be separate from the role of customer success, especially when it's a really technical implementation. At Gatekeeper, where I am now, there's a lot of customization, there's a lot of complex integrations, and if the CSM's role is to talk to the people element, we can't also be talking on the technical side. So that's where I think it should be separate, and we have these different subject matter experts coming together. On a PLG organization where maybe the tool is really simple, really complex, maybe that implementation can be done digitally, or it can be done with just, a one-to-many training session that can be run by CSMs. But yeah, I think it's really dependent on the go-to-market strategy and just the type of organization that you're working with. More and more people talk about change management in customer success, and that's the piece that I find the most exciting. That's how I've been running my teams for the last 2 or 3 years. We're change management experts. So starting to see that rhetoric in the thought leaders of LinkedIn and CS in Focus and just the thought leaders in the industry is really exciting, because I think what that's going to do is elevate all CSMs. And I think that's going to actually give a lot more value to what we do within an organization and to customers. So that's the one I'm the most excited about.
Quite interesting you mentioned that. We were just talking about Wire to Book Up. Yeah.
I haven't read that book, but I've heard a lot about it. I don't read that much. I always joke that I read like 2 books a year, but I will definitely be adding that book into my to-read list.
It's interesting because it mentioned that how people are resistant to change is like how you associate to your brain.
Yeah.
But also to me is like the meter, like what is this change in green, yellow, red, and how much people can, the threshold.
Yeah. Yeah, and so when I talk about change management, one of the change management models that I personally really align to, and maybe they talk about this in Wired to Resist. There's a change management model called the Kubler-Ross change curve, and the reason I really like it is because it really deals with the emotional, it has to go through a process I think can be really helpful in setting those expectations. Aspects of change, which is where I feel like there might be tie-in into what they're saying about how people's brains are wired. Change is highly emotional for people, and so it's really normal for people to resist at first, and then they get into an area of experimenting with what this new state of being or existing or what have you will be. And the more we can help people through that like lower phase where they start to experiment, the faster they're going to get to the end phase, which is integration. So if I think about it in what you just said about red, green, and orange, or yellow, or what have you, yeah, people tend to sort of go from like red to orange, and the sooner we can help them get to green, the better, and we do that by dealing with those underlying emotions. So what I see a lot of the times is that people go, oh, we're just going to send our end users an email and telling them that they have to use XYZ tool, Gatekeeper, whatever other tool it is. And then 3 months later, they come back to us and they go, no one's using this tool sucks, this is all your fault. So it's sort of a series of questions of asking, okay, what are you doing the second you've signed the deal? How are you communicating that to people? What are you talking about when you're in implementation to the rest of the team? What does your testing group look like? Are you bringing people in so that they can sort of be innovators? Those innovators can be like boots on the ground and help some of the people who are more resistant to change. What does your training look like? Are you catering to lots of different training styles? So it's not so much like a single piece, but really just kind of doing an analysis of what they have and what they don't have. At Gatekeeper, we've put together an adoption best practices framework, which we call COLTS. So communicate, observe and listen, train, and then share and celebrate. And so we sort of go through each area. What's the communication like? How are they getting feedback? What's the training like? And how are they going to share and celebrate? And we put together a plan with our customers on how to reach each one of those elements. And that's been designed to help through the change curve.
So we're talking about changes, different changes with the customer. What kind of change do you wish you have more within your organization?
My own organization?
Or in general, yeah?
Or in general?
What should we do more?
That's a great question. You know, I find for myself and a lot of other leaders, I wish that I actually spent more time talking to customers. I find sometimes as leaders, we tend to sit on our ivory tower and we're kind of like, you know, that meme from The Simpsons where Principal Skinner's like, is it me who's wrong? No, it's the children who are wrong. Like, I find that as leaders, we're a little bit like that. So I want to challenge myself and challenge other leaders to actually do customer interviews, sit in on customer conversations and ask questions to really understand where customers are today, especially given the economic climate that we have. Things have really changed, and I think it's important that we meet customers where they're at.
I know this year's numbers are more or less. What kind of tips or strategy would you give for the CS?
I think something that we can do to sort of live by the do more with less is, aside from the customer interviews, which I think are really important with leaders, as an individual contributor CSM, you have so much data at your disposal. You've got product usage data, you've got, are they attending webinar, that type of data, are they responding to our emails, are they not responding to our emails? There's even like intent data. We have a tool that sort of tells us if they've recently connected with a sales rep from a competitor. So that type of information, like, it's already at your disposal. Sometimes it might be owned by a different team separate to customer success, but like, ask if marketing knows some of this information. Ask if sales knows some of this information. You're already paying for it. It's already there, but bring that into your Q4 planning, your account planning, your success planning, and start to like live and breathe that data before you have your customer interactions, so that you can come to the conversation much better prepared and potentially with some leverage. You know, information is power, so the more you use the information at your disposal, the better. This is one of those core competencies that isn't tied to like CS in general, but I think is the most important, and it's being curious. I think if all else fails, if you're just curious as a CSM, you're gonna stumble onto success in some way, shape, or form. And I think that extends beyond the role as the CSM. I think everyone being curious is gonna be a lot better for whatever role they have, for the world, if we want to get philosophical. But I think that's the most important non-CS specific skill set that you can have.
That's great. Do you, just being curious, we're here for CSM focus and here in Canada. Do you see any difference between US and Canada?
I'm actually going to answer that question by not answering the question because my career, I've honestly mostly dealt with just Canadians. I've always only hired Canadians. And that's not like me being, you know, I only want Canadians, but that's just been the reality of my time as a leader. But I have had exposure to how the European teams do CS. And I do find there's a little bit of a difference between the EMEA teams and the North American teams. I think part of that has to do with the fact that like Salesforce, who pioneered CS, it's North American. And in EMEA, it was a lot more common to have customer service reps and have sort of support lines. And that's where a lot of the CS teams have come from, more of support moving into CS, whereas in North America, it's been more of like account management moving into CS and shedding some of the sales aspects. So yeah, I do find that in the UK side, it tends to be a little bit more support focused. I have found that is changing really rapidly. If you had asked me that 2 years ago, I would have been like, you know, the UK considers CS as really just support, but that isn't the case anymore. But that's where I found more of the difference.
Yeah. I noticed that account management is coming back. A lot of them is having the quota attached to your CSM job. If you look at the job description. Yeah. So I think people not just think about how to support change management, also think about the revenue side. And understand the numbers.
I have like a philosophy that I've been preaching since I became a leader. But I think if you do the parts of your job as a CSM right, that revenue just happens naturally. So I do think that like having quota, having a revenue number above your head, I do think that's a natural progression of this. Like we're not driving adoption, we're not driving change management just for the sake of it or for the fun of it or just because. There is an end goal at the end of that. So if we just focus on those plays and those aspects, that revenue is going to naturally come. And I think that that's kind of where that account management piece is coming in.
Oh, this is quite interesting. I saw a question that happened in our CSM focus community. Somebody asked that, how can we communicate when there's a customer asks for a feature and then it gets deployed? How do you manage that expectation?
So I have lots of thoughts on this because I think it goes two ways. One, it's managing the expectations with the customer. I do think that there is a danger in sort of being like, oh yeah, this is a great idea, we'll definitely do it. Because now you've inadvertently trained that customer that they say jump and we say how high. And then the other aspect, which I think is equally challenging, is sometimes how do you push for that internally? And I think the answer to that is different. So when you're thinking about how to advocate for that internally with the product team, think about what's important to the product team. Look at what their OKRs are. What are the KPIs that they're striving for? What's already on the roadmap and what's realistic and feasible? If the roadmap's already jam-packed with everything and you're coming in being like, hey, can we just push for this? You're not going to be taken seriously because you're not sort of respecting their time, respecting what they have to do, respecting their outcomes. But if you tie that into the narrative of, hey, I understand that one of your OKRs for this cycle is to improve XYZ experience. I've been talking to this customer and my team members have been talking to all these other customers as well. And they're really interested in something like this. I think this fits into your OKR. You've set that up a lot better because you're coming at it in a way of like, here's how you helping me is going to help you. So I think that internally is really important. And then with customers, as I said, just setting the expectation that, this might be a great idea, but here's our roadmap and here's how our roadmap works and here's how we look at our product development and here's the process. Explaining that process to them.
You mentioned OKRs. Do you think that should be measured by NRR solely?
That's a good question.
And how do you comp your team?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually eliminated NRR, GRR, logo retention rate, LRR, from our bonus metrics for CSMs. The reason being, you can do everything right, but still, unfortunately, for reasons outside of your control, still not get the expansion that you're looking for, not get the renewal that you're looking for, or get churn. Especially right now, we're keep hearing about a recession that may or may not be coming. A lot of customers might be going through financial issues themselves. We don't want to penalize our CSMs for something that's way beyond their control. So instead, what we comp our CSMs on are the things that they can control. So we don't have a quota, but we do have CSQLs, which are like very top of funnel. They need to be qualified leads that a CSM comes with, and then sales takes over and closes that lead. So that's something you can control. Maybe the lead doesn't close, maybe it gets declined. But as long as you've identified the business need and that there's band, so there's like budget, there's resources, all of those things, our CSMs get comped positively as a result. The other element is advocacy. So were you able to get a case study or a referral or anything like that? And then the final elements are activity metrics. So right now where I work, we rebuilt our engagement model and redefined what it means to be a CSM. So we want to hit the reset button with our customers. That's part of the activity metrics. Were you able to introduce the engagement model to them? And then we've got some data hygiene challenges that everyone has. So we've put that into their model as well, because bad data in, bad data out. So if we flip that on the side, we can incentivize people to put in clean data, then the better. So all of those things, a CSM, if they don't do it, it's on them. If they do it and they hit their bonus, it's also on them. So we eliminated the GRR and NRR. I do think it's really important to keep track of those metrics, but more as a business level. I don't think it should be tied to the CS team. I think it should be like a business level objective for every single team, product, marketing, sales, and CS to all be looking at together.
What does customer success to you? How do you define customer success?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to go back to my preaching about change management. I really think we're in an era where a customer success manager is a business consultant and a change management consultant. And I think it's someone who helps customers meet their end goals and their desired outcomes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Great chatting.
Wherever we go, we always have CS in focus. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to check out our community at csinfocus.com. If any topics you'd like to explore further, let us know.